Welcome to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Goss from Village of Norridge PD in Illinois, 29 total years in law enforcement. He's also a graduate of the FBI National Academy. Welcome to the show, Chief Goss. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course, I'm looking forward to it. So, one of the things that I wanted to kind of dive into is something that you're known for, and that is ethical leadership. What does this mean? What is ethical leadership?
I think it's just being true to who you are as a person, and that kind of flows into how you lead your department or your division or your troop, whoever you're leading. And one of the things, to a little bit about me, I did 25 years in another department, Addison Police Department. I retired as deputy chief, and I took over here in Norridge about 4.5 years ago as the chief. And one thing I did when I got here was I interviewed every single person that worked here, one-on-one interview. And one of the questions I asked was, what do I need to know to be a good leader here? And overwhelmingly, it was don't lie to us and don't yell at us.
Okay.
And I thought it was very interesting. I was like, okay, don't yell at us. That's easy. I can yell at my kids all day long, but I'm not going to yell at grown adults, right? So that was an easy one. That wasn't going to happen. But the don't lie to me, that was interesting to me is why that kept coming up as a reoccurring theme. And what it was the previous chief here would say things to them or promise them things or say he would do things and it wouldn't get done. And listen, no matter how big your police department is, it's almost like a small high school, and rumors spread and things, people know what's going on. And so the don't lie to me, to me flows into the ethical leadership. You have to have that ethical ability to tell the truth. And if I can't do it, I don't want to do it, or I can't tell you what's going on, I'm not going to lie to you about it. I'm just going to either tell you, no, we're not doing it. This is why we're not doing it, or I can't talk about it, and we're going to move forward from there.
Yeah. Would you say that ethical leadership takes a lot of authenticity and maybe even a little bit of vulnerability?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And you also have to have the ability to know that when you implement something, when you do something, if it's not working, if it's, don't keep trying to, force that, round peg in the square hole, and just kind of take a step back and go, all right, I'm going to be honest with myself, and I'm going to be honest with everybody here that didn't work,
Yeah.
and move forward from there.
What you said was really interesting about I have to first be honest with myself. I think sometimes it's harder for us to be honest with ourselves than it is for us to be honest with other people. I think having that self assessment sometimes is really hard for us to take a look at ourselves and say, is this working? Am I doing the things that I should be doing or I need to be doing? Because to me, it sounds like not yelling and not lying to me sounds pretty simple. Like it's like if someone told me that, I'm like, done deal. Like, okay, like we're going to be set up for success here. But I like that you said, hey, like I have to first, be honest with myself and then, be able to be honest with everybody else. And sometimes that honesty means saying that I can't say something, or maybe honesty means that like something didn't go the way I had planned, and it didn't work. And so how can we, figure out a new way forward?
Yeah, well, we're very prideful people, especially when you get up in leadership. You have to, let's face it, you have to have a little bit of an ego, but you also have to temper that ego with, with being vulnerable, like you said. And so that, self-reflection on yourself and saying, this isn't working or it's not going the way that I wanted, you have to be able to admit that, so that as a team, as a department, you can move forward from there.
Yeah, I like it. I did want to talk a little bit about what you think creates a healthy culture. I know that you said when you walked into the organization, you interviewed everyone, you said, hey, what can I do to be the best leader possible? They gave you two top things: no lying, no yelling. And to me, it sounds like that helps to build trust and it helps to take steps, in the direction of building a healthier culture. But what is, I hear, chiefs talk about culture all the time, culture first, healthy culture. What makes a healthy culture?
Well, I think first you have to do when you come into a new organization, coming in from the outside like I did, is you have to observe for a while. You have to see what the culture is. You know, what is the vibe of the police department? What is the vibe of the officers, the civilian staff, and just kind of get a handle on that. And that takes a good 3 to 4 months to really sit back and unless it's something that is drastically needs to be changed right away, don't make any changes. Just kind of sit back and watch what's going on, observe what's going on, and then from there, you can start to figure out what you want to do, what changes you want to make, and what culture you want to build, and how you want to build that culture. And I think building that culture comes from getting buy-in from the employees, from the officers, from the civilian staff as a whole, and from the village, because in police departments we have to remember we're not a silo, right? We work with the village as a whole, so we really have to take that into account. But getting buy-in from the people that work with you is huge. Finding out what they want to do, how they want to do it, and then giving them the ability to do it, to actually make it happen. That then flows into your succession planning, as you get farther in, because they have experience in doing things that are really making a change within the department.
So you think that giving them ownership helps to create more buy-in and then helps to create a better culture?
Yeah, a simple example is when I first started here, they had a brand new detective car that they just purchased. It was a brand new Charger, and first of all, they all thought I was going to take it as the chief's car, and I'm like, that would be a really jerky move for a chief to come in and do that. I'm sure it's happened, but I'm like, no, I'm not taking it. But I was looking at their other detective car and how it was laid out with the lights, the sirens, et cetera. And detective cars, sometimes are used for surveillance and are supposed to be covert, but their one that they had outfitted, it just kind of screamed police. And no matter who looked at it, you're like, oh, that's a cop car.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of like, well, that one screams police. How do you guys, and I'm like, who lays these out? Who sets these up? And they're like, well, the upfitter just does it for us. We don't really have any say so. And I said, all right, well, how do you want to do it? And that was huge for them. They're like, you want to know how we want it laid out? And they dove in and they laid that car out exactly how they wanted it to look. And that just was a very small example of getting some buy-in from the officers.
Yeah, I like it. And to me, the word that popped in my head was empowerment, to ask those questions and to show your team that you actually care about what they think.
Yeah.
And, you're asking them to go out and do an incredibly challenging job, and you're trusting them to do these incredibly hard tasks out on the road and within the organization. And so for them to not know that they have say in some of those things. You know what I mean? Like it seems
Yeah.
counterproductive a little bit. So for you to say, "Hey, I actually care," like
Yeah.
you are a value to this organization and what you think matters. I think to me, the word that popped up was empowering your people.
Yeah. And that was one of the things, I'd say, well, why do we do it this way? Because we've always done it that way, and that
Yeah.
was a resounding theme. And so, it has become, okay, well, if that's the best way to do it, fine, we can keep doing it that way. But is there a better way to do it? And if so, what is that way? And I'm not here to think of every single way to do it. I'm not here to make every single decision, ultimately it will come down to me. But I want to hear how you guys want to do it, what the best way you think is to do it, and how do we get to that? How do we get to that goal?
The what, the why, the how. Do
Hmm.
you think that you have had a lot of success as a leader having that ability to be inquisitive and to ask questions and to ask why?
Yeah, I do. And one of the things, and I don't remember where I heard this, but it was if you think you're the smartest person in the room, you're not. Always surround yourself with smarter people, and smarter people make you look better, right?
Mhm.
And some leaders are afraid of that because if people around me are smarter, well, then they might take my job, right? Well, that could happen, but my goal as the chief is to make those smarter people look good and get a good product out of everybody. And then eventually one of them will take my job. And that's a goal of mine, is to train people to take my job and train the people below them to take their job, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think, you can look at it a couple different ways. You can look at that, from a fear perspective, or that could be the fire that lights you up to improve yourself. I had, early in my career, I was, I was working for a company and I was like really trying to get into the wellness space, right? And so I was like, I'll take any job, like any job at all. And they're like, okay, front desk, like you're gonna help, take phone calls and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, I don't care. And it was like $8 an hour. And I was so happy. I was like, I've got my foot in the door. Like, these people were like the best at what they did. And I was like, I'm going to absorb all this information and I'm just going to like learn. And I was so excited. And they had told me that if I worked with them from the ground up, that they would help to build me up to a level to where then I could also be teaching and more involved in, things that I wanted to do. And I had been there for a couple of years and I had never gotten the opportunity. And I was like maybe a little impatient, young and impatient. And I had this like realization. I was like, man, like I need to just get out there. Like I need to like be boots on the ground. Like I need to like get experience doing the things that I want to do. Like, yes, I'm absorbing all this information, but I'm
Right.
not having the opportunity to implement it. And I went to my boss at the time and I was like, hey, I gotta go, like, thank you so much for the opportunity, but like, I need to learn. I need to like know how to do these things. And they looked at me and they said, hey, like, just so you know, the only reason why we were ever going to give you the opportunity to work here at that capacity is because you worked here at the desk.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, there's a line of people who want to work here that are better than you and have more experience than you. And they're going to get opportunities over you if you don't work here.
Yeah.
And my response, I think I could have done fear and been like, okay, like I'll stay. But instead, I said, I want to be given the opportunities because I'm the best, not just because I work here. Like
Yeah.
I want to be given the opportunities because I'm the best for the job. And less than a year later, I was hired there as like one of their instructors because
Yeah.
I put in the work. And so, the reason why I say the story is because, yeah, there are people who are better than you. There are people who are smarter than you. And that should be a fire for you
Mhm.
to be the absolute best that you can and to learn from those people. And, as obviously you're at the top of the organization, you want everyone working under you to be better than you. It's almost like raising your kids, it's like you want your kids to be better than you, and so I think that you can look at it a couple different ways. And obviously it's a very competitive industry and profession. And there are people looking for your job, but like,
Yeah.
how can that be your motivation to, continue to grow and improve yourself?
No, I agree. Absolutely.
I learned a lot of things the hard way, but I think that was one of the things I did right.
Yeah, no, but that's the hard way is sometimes, or having a need or having a want to do something and then saying, all right, how do I do it? And how
Yep.
do I get out there and how do I make it happen? And, sometimes the need to survive is part of that. If you've got no money or you've got no job and you want to do the best, or you got a family that you have to provide for, you're gonna strive and you're gonna work harder. And that is going to be kind of the fire, like you said, when this person might be better than me. Well, now I have to do more,
Yeah.
to show myself.
And I think that we should always be looking at that, right? We should always be looking at, how we can do better. I'm not saying like don't give yourself credit for the hard work that you're already doing. I do believe in celebrating the wins. I do believe in like, recognizing the hard work that we do. But I also think asking the questions, how can I be better? Am
Yeah,
I doing things the best way, or is it just the way I've always done it? Is
right.
there a better way or a more efficient way to do things? And I think that we have to reevaluate ourselves at different points in our career and different points in our lives, whether that's professional or personal, because we're always in flux. Like we're always changing. And, what we did when we were in our 20s is going to look different now,
Yeah,
And so, how can we ask ourselves those questions? And I think, again, it takes those honest conversations with ourselves. And we have to like look at ourselves and ask, like, are we as healthy as we can be? Are we taking care of ourselves? Are we putting in the work that we know that we're capable of? And it's those honest conversations that sometimes we neglect.
yeah. When I left my department at 25 years, I was on autopilot. I was cruising in my job. I was a deputy chief for a long time, and I was like, this is easy. I got this, and I was kind of phoning it in. And I looked at myself like, this isn't right. This isn't good. What can I do? Can I take that next step? And so I kind of threw myself out there, and I started interviewing at places. And when I got this job, I'll be honest, for the first week, I sat in this desk going, oh man, what did I do? But I read this book in between my 2 weeks off, in between retiring and taking this job. It was called Deliberate Discomfort. And it was all about putting yourself in positions to work harder, to be deliberately uncomfortable in your position to make yourself work harder and make yourself work better. And that's what I did. And so yeah, that first week I sat here thinking, man, what did I do? But every day got better. Every day got easier. And, it was a grind. The first year here was a grind for sure. But, we definitely made great strides here at this department.
Yeah, I think discomfort is necessary for success and growth. I had someone in my life really early on look at me and I was like complaining about something. And they looked at me and they're like, Paige, you're really bad at being uncomfortable. And I remember being so offended. I was like immediate, like in my head, I didn't say this to this person because this person was actually someone I looked up to a lot.
Yeah.
They were really good at what they did, like really well respected within the industry. And so internally, I was like, F you, like, what do you mean, but then I like sat back with it because I remember being like in my room, like arms crossed and just like replaying it and being like, no, I'm
Yeah.
not, no, I'm not like, and then I realized I'm like, wow, yes, I am, and sometimes it takes that too. Like sometimes it takes someone like kind of calling you out a little bit and being like, wow, like, you're not being, very good at being uncomfortable, or maybe like you're complaining a lot, or maybe you're phoning it in, or whatever that is, for someone to kind
Right.
of call you out a little bit for you to then, but the important part is you have to have the ability to ask yourself those questions. Like, is that true or not? And I came to the conclusion that she was absolutely right. And
Yeah.
after that point, I haven't been perfect at this, but I've really tried to sit with discomfort, to be better, and more resistant to discomfort. And so I lean a lot on breathing techniques and, trying to like get through it in a way that's, better than me just sitting there complaining and,
Sure.
which is what I used to do. But I do want to talk a little bit about some of the things that you guys have done organizationally. So
Sure.
you came in and you started working on culture, you observed, you asked the questions within the organization. And I know wellness is something that is important to you and something that you've been focusing on. And you have a three-tier approach to wellness. I know I said offline that I would argue that maybe you have a
Yeah.
four-tier approach. But can you talk a little bit about, maybe how those conversations started and what are some of the initial steps that you took in building out your wellness programming?
Sure. So I look at it as a financial, mental, and a physical approach to your wellness. And the finance, that can be a struggle sometimes for officers, especially if you've got a couple divorces in the queue or whatever. But our pensions are very good, and they should take us on to retirement, but you can also do things to supplement those. So we bring in, people, financial experts to talk about, maybe getting into a 401k or a deferred comp, life insurance, or, maybe some other programs like that. So we continuously bring those people into roll call, and make sure that the officers have that available to them. And the physical, we put a gym in the department. They didn't have one here before, so I kind of found somewhere in the budget. I found about $18,000, and I said, "Let's go." And we put a brand new gym in, and we've opened it up 24 hours a day to the officers, and we've actually opened it up to the entire village staff as well. Because it's just right to do, right? And then the mental and coaching aspect of it is we implemented a coaching mental wellness app that the officers have available to them. They can do it on duty if they want. There's coaching experts that they get paired up with. They can pick their coach. If they want to change their coach, they can change it. There's also exercises within the app that they can do, like you were talking about, the breathing exercises, et cetera. And those I found to be beneficial as well, just to kind of bring myself down and center myself when my mind is racing and I can't seem to get a handle on it. The breathing exercises work well. So that's kind of the approach that we're taking. And we also offer a mental wellness check-in once a year for all the officers as well. And they have the availability to do that more often if they need to.
Yeah. And you also, and this is why I said I would argue that
Yeah.
maybe there's like a little fourth one in there, but you also really focus on professional development. And in my opinion, and you can tell me if you have a different opinion, I've been challenged on here before, so please give me your honest opinion. But I think that professional development is a part of wellness. The more that you feel like you are improving yourself and you're, becoming more of an expert at what you do, that plays into how you feel. And I know that that's also something that you guys focus on. So can you talk a little bit about that? And do you agree that that's maybe a part of wellness, or do you completely
And write
separate
down
the
now.
two?
It's a four-tier. I have a four-tier approach now. No, I would agree with you absolutely. Because if you're not happy with what you're doing, if you're not challenged with what you're doing, then you're not going to feel good about what you're doing, right? I do have a theory that there are some people out there that just want to complain, and they're going to come. I always say I can give you $1 million, and the person next to $1 million, and the person next to you is going to complain that theirs is in fifties and yours is in hundreds. Why wasn't mine in hundreds? They just want to complain. Fine. We can move those people aside, and we can deal with the people that want to do more and get better and put in the work to do that. And that professional development comes with that. And that's offering the training classes that the officers want to go to. Find out what they're interested in. Are you interested in traffic? Are you interested in maybe gangs, maybe drugs? What is it you're interested in? And let's get you trained up in that, and but you have to be willing to put the work in for it too. Just like the gym. I can build the gym, but I can't make you go to it. I can offer the mental wellness check-in for you, but I can't make you talk to the person, right? So you have to be willing to put the work in. So tell me what you're interested in, and we'll get you trained up in it. And then also that leads to succession planning too. But the better you feel about how you're doing your job or what you're doing, the better you're going to feel about yourself. Absolutely.
I agree. And I think it helps with motivation. I think it helps with morale. Like the goal is that this is my goal. My goal is that I can put in place the things that are going to help me so that when I wake up every day, I have a smile on my face and say, I get to go to work.
Yeah.
I get to do the things, and you're right. I mean, I think one of the challenges, and I've been here before too, so I'm not like immune to this, but I think that we lean so much on our own self motivation to do things, and motivation is fleeting and it may never come. And so we have to lean on continuous dedication and consistency to the things that we're doing. And I think that helps a lot to take action in the things that we want to do, or to have that, quote unquote, like motivation.
Yeah.
I think that we have to just take steps, small steps that lead to bigger steps over time. And some people are going to be better at that than others. And what I have found to be, and this isn't 100%, you're right. There are some people who are just going to be like, no, back a roll call, arms
Right.
crossed, and they're just like, no. But I would say that everybody, for the most part, is motivated by different things,
Mhm.
or will take action for different reasons. And I've asked this question a lot. I've polled a lot of people to ask, like, why is wellness important to you? What is your why when it comes to wellness? And most people, their response is not for them,
Right.
it's for someone else. So most people are going to say, I want to be here for my kids, or I want to be here for my spouse, or, I want to be here. I've had people, in a roll call room be like, I want to be here for these guys. I want to make sure that I can perform at my best so that I can, keep these guys safe.
Right.
And so if we can identify that within the law enforcement profession, that you guys are really good at taking care of everybody else, and that your why and your mission for what you do both professionally and in the wellness space for the most part is for everybody else and not necessarily yourself, then how can we have those conversations of saying, okay, well, if you want to do this for your kids, let's say, for example, like you want to be fit for as long as possible so that you can run around with your kids and your grandkids, then here are the things that we need to do. Let's get you in the gym so that, you can do that on a consistent basis so we can set you up for long term. And so I think it's almost working backwards a little bit, but trying to identify, the why within each person has been successful for me. So
Yeah.
not everyone's gonna do it, but I think vast
Right.
majority are willing to do it for someone else.
I agree, and I agree. We in law enforcement and the first responder world do it for other people, and we kind of neglect ourselves, and that's a shame, and we got to try to fix that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when someone's like sitting on the couch and they're like, I don't want to go to the gym, be like, it's not for you. It's for your kids.
Right.
Get your butt in the gym.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you had mentioned this a few times, and I want to come back to it, but this idea of succession planning. So can
Sure.
you give us a little bit of insight into your strategies and the things that you do to set people up?
Yeah. So coming in from the outside, one of the things I said in my interview process, which I think helped me to get the job, was I want to be the last chief you hire from the outside. I want to train the people below me to take my job, and that goes back, that goes to what we were just talking about, and what finding out what people you make people tick, right? What do they want to do? How do they want to get better with their job? And just giving them the ability to do that. And so succession planning doesn't start just with me training the person below me to take my job. The person below him, or her, has to take that job, and so on. And so we've got to train these officers from the start. Good field training program, and then good continuing education when they're in the job to keep moving up through the ranks. And listen, in police work, we know it all well. When you take that supervisory position, that new sergeant spot, you're usually going to the worst shift possible, right? And so you have to make it attractive to them somehow to say, hey, I know you've got day shift. You've been, and that's great for you and your family right now. But if you take this supervisor spot, it's going to pay off in the long run. And I think I lied to my wife early on in my career with all the overtime I was doing and all the spots I was working and the different things, was like, it's going to pay off. It's going to pay off in the long run. It did, it was all that hard work that went into it, but you have to be willing to do it, and you have to be willing to, again, like we talked about, become uncomfortable in your position and leave that comfortable day shift spot and go to midnights to be a sergeant, a brand new sergeant. But that's going to help with the succession planning and help with moving the department forward.
Do you feel like all the work that you've done in building the trust helps with that? Because my thought is if you have two chiefs, one who, in the beginning you said maybe there's one chief who lied or maybe like said things were going to happen and they never did. And they're saying, hey, take the sergeant night shift and it's going to pay off, versus a chief that's like, I'm never going to lie to you. I'm not going to yell to you, like, yell at you. I care about your future, saying, hey, take this night shift, it's going to pay off. Do you think that the work that you do with building the trust and the culture of the organization helps them to trust you when you say it's going to pay off and they believe that it's going to pay off long term?
I do. And I think, walking the walk too, showing that, hey, I've done this, and
Yeah.
I've been where you were. And I understand that it's hard to leave that day shift spot and go to that midnight, sergeant shift spot. But I've done it, and it might take a little longer than you think or than you want, but eventually, it will be beneficial to you.
Yeah. So do you think it's important to try to work as many different roles within the organization as possible if you do have the goal to promote and maybe be a part of the executive team?
Yes, and even in a smaller department, like we're 39 sworn officers, so we're fairly small. Maybe it's not a different role, but a different, it's something different for the day. Like anything that comes up when I'm looking for somebody to do something, take it, take the chance and take the challenge. And I would try to do everything I could at the department I was at before. I love detectives. That was my favorite spot, but I knew I had to do a little bit more than that, and so I had to take that sergeant's test eventually and become a street sergeant and work on the street and do that. And anything that came up, any different little thing, I would be like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll try that, and some of it I didn't want to do, but I knew I would be better off for doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you. I think in my experience, being a yes person has always paid off. I think that the more you say yes, and the more you're a team player, and the more you put yourself in different positions, the more you can learn, and then the more experience you have, and the more you can speak to those things. But then I've also had people say that wellness is about boundaries and, being able to say
Yes.
no, which has been a hard
Yes.
thing for me because I'm like, I want to say yes to everyone. I want to be a team player. I want to, do all the things. But then where's the line of, being able to also I don't know if I believe in balance, because if you think balance is, perfectly on a scale, I don't think that that ever exists. But if I also want to focus on wellness, then like when are the times to say no? And that's what I struggle with because
Yeah.
I'm the yes girl too.
Yeah, I call it people, say the work-life balance. I call it work-life harmony because,
Mm.
when my kids were younger, I wanted to be at home more. My kids are older now. My youngest is 24. I can be at work a little bit more, so my balance is a little bit different that, so it's not a true balance, it's a harmony, what's good for you at the time of life that you're in. And I agree. You have to learn to say no sometimes too. And I struggle with that as well. And that's why I'm on like 4 or 5 different boards, because sure, I'll do that. Sure, I'll do that, but,
Yeah.
in the end, it is good for you, but you do have to say no at times.
I like that. I like the work life harmony. I think that's really cool. And I agree with you. Like we said this earlier, what I could do in my 20s when I didn't really have like a ton of responsibility or family or, it was just like,
Yeah.
okay, like just go for it, and had a lot more energy to do a lot of things. And, things change. And so I think we have to, I almost visualize us being kind of like water, like sometimes you have to have that fluidity and understand that like, you are not going to be the same person as you were last year. Circumstances might change. And so we have to be able to like reevaluate where we're putting our time and energy into things. And so I like that a lot. Life or work life harmony. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Uh,
stole it from somebody, so
yeah. Someone smarter than you, right?
that's absolutely.
My final kind of topic for you is this idea of retirement, legacy. Um, How do you think that people can set themselves up better for retirement? And what do you think, on a personal level, is the legacy that you want to leave behind when you do finally retire?
Oh boy. So what can we do to the first question is, what can we do to set ourselves up for retirement? Number one, be healthy. I mean that, because I've seen it where people have retired and shortly after they've retired, they've passed away. And that's just sad in many different ways. So keeping yourself physically, mentally healthy as you go through this job, which is a strenuous job, is very important as you move closer to retirement. Um, and as far as my legacy, I just want to be known as somebody that was honest with everybody and somebody that was respected. And I get officers from my old department, who text me. I keep in contact with them, and when they say they miss you and you're still talked about and you're talked about highly, that's a really cool thing. So yeah, I know I'm not gonna make everybody happy. I'm not gonna please everybody. And I'm gonna have to disappoint some people sometimes. But just knowing that I treated everybody fairly and was respected is a good thing.
Yeah, I think we all want to get to the end of our life and our career and feel like we did a good job and that we held true to our values. And I think that's the best that we can hope for. I love that you said if someone reaches out and says, "Hey, how you doing?"
Yeah.
And talks highly of you. I do think that that's a huge win and something to strive for. I also think, when we talk about wellness and being proactive and retirement and being healthy, the one thing I think that's really sad, and I was just having a conversation recently about this, where someone said that they were in the academy, and one of their instructors in the academy said, a third of you are going to end up, or a third or half of you are going to end up divorced. Another third of you are going to end up with an alcohol problem, and probably most of you are going to, die within like 3 to 5 years of retirement. And I find it to be sad that people are just accepting that as
Mhm.
like that is what is going to happen, that
Right.
that is truth. And of course, yes, we have seen those things happen, right? We do see a high divorce rate. We do see alcoholism as a coping mechanism. We do see short lifespans after retirement. These are things that we have seen to happen. And instead of being like, yep, that's just what's going to happen. Like, better
Yeah.
just, get on board now. I
Yeah. Which
think
one do you
that,
want? Choose one.
yeah, right. Yeah. Or maybe just be an overachiever and do all three, So Um, instead of that just being, something that's accepted, why can't we have those conversations of saying, hey, these things can happen. So how are we going to be proactive today to reduce that risk?
Right.
How, and I say this all the time because I think it's so true. Like if it's predictable, it's preventable, right? Like if you
Yes.
know that these things can happen, then that means we can prevent those things. And so
Yep.
instead of saying, hey, sorry, dude, like, that's just your fate. That's what's going to happen. Being like, hey, these things can happen and that they're likely to happen because we've seen them happen. And here's what we're going to do now so that they don't happen. And I
Right.
think that's what we're starting to see in this wellness space is having these conversations of being like, you don't have to end up like that.
Yeah.
Of course, like, is divorce going to be eliminated entirely? No.
No.
Are we going to see people, still maybe using alcoholism as, a coping mechanism? Sure. But we can vastly reduce these
Hmm.
numbers, but it takes proactive preventative measures to get there. And so I really appreciate the efforts that you're putting, into your organization to be more proactive and to set people up for success. And my final question is for that younger generation who
Sure.
are coming in, who have the perfect opportunity now to be proactive in their lives and careers. What words of wisdom would you share with them that, maybe you wish you would have known when you were younger?
Well, I'm going to share with what I was told when I was going through my background process. It was Detective Paul Hart, who I still talk to today, who was doing my background, and he told me always keep friends outside of law enforcement. Don't make all your friends be cops, because once you do that, then your view of the world kind of becomes a little bit smaller. And I took that advice, and my two best friends from high school, who ended up marrying each other, Dominic and Caroline. Caroline and my wife became best friends, and the four of us hang out together all the time now. So they're very special to me, and keeping those friends outside of law enforcement is probably one of the best pieces of advice.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for your time today. I really appreciate you coming on here.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course.